It's a new year, and with 2020 comes a new choice. Although all the games are on offer, we're back to a classic choice format, 12 games and a humble original. Is humble starting the year as it means to go on? Let's take a look. This month's humble original is Heey Park Boy. You'll play as U-Boy, a small alien thing who crash lands on Earth and needs to return home. In order to get back home, the spaceship needs the power of plants, or something like that, and so flowers must be watered and played to. I was equipped with a keyboard which syncs to the amazing music of the game and gives the flower colour. Look, this game is bizarre. It promises more abilities later on, when 250 plants have been grown, and I'm sure that these can offer some fun, but I honestly can't see them revolutionising the game. With this flower growing premise, I don't know who the long-term audience is with Heey Park Boy. I liked my 30 minutes or so of this, and enjoyed the late 90s/early 2000s visuals and music, but I'm not sure if this effect will last for hours more of the game. PC Building Simulator is a cyberpunk game set with an 80s aesthetic starring fire-breathing dinosaurs with a vengeance for sheep. This game is like the game suggests, a PC building simulator, and a good one at that. I know the basics of building a PC, but did the tutorial anyway. With a lot of detail on the components and their functions, I can see this game's tutorial in free mode serving as a fantastic educational tool in computer science. With the screws to unscrew, components to mount and cables to link, it offers a digital hands-on experience. So we know this would be a good tool in the classroom or for those curious at how a PC comes together, but how does PC Building Simulator fare as an actual game? Well, actually surprisingly well. In the career, you'll play as a new owner of a PC repair shop. With requests coming through via the in-game email system, which cleverly uses your desktop wallpaper for that added immersion, you'll be ordering components, accepting/declining orders, and even choosing what delivery services you'll use to make sure the order can be fulfilled in time. In my 20 minutes of the career mode, I was removing viruses, unleashing compressed air, replacing a GPU and adding an extra hard drive to different systems. I went into this one apprehensive, really unsure on how a PC building simulator would serve as entertainment to those already familiar with PCs. I discovered a fun, laid-back game. If casually repairing PCs without the real-world worry of actually messing someone's hardware up, then do take a look at PC Building Simulator. Next up is Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey, an open-world survival game where you just so happen to play as a monkey from 10 million years ago. The game opened with a harsh cutscene, showing the brutality of the ancient jungle, and then placed me with the control of a baby monkey. Left alone, and with not much knowledge of the world, I was left to use my basic hearing and smelling senses to locate home. I thought I had located where home was, and began to head towards a tree. Alas, this wasn't home, and en route I was attacked by a snake. My screen then filled with a strange filter that made the game a weird abstract flow of paint. Whether this was intentional to show the disorientation of a young monkey would face, or a bug with the game, it left me very confused. I thought this was a glitch, so I stopped my recording and was prepared to restart the game. A few seconds after finishing the recording, a crocodile appeared and killed my baby monkey. I just wish I caught this on camera. I was then given control of an older monkey and assumingly had free rein to evolve. I climbed up a tree, which admittedly has some good climbing mechanics, and advanced in the climbing skills. I commend Panache Digital Games for making a distinct and experimental game, but this isn't for me. If being dropped into a lush forest and advancing your species of monkey sounds fun, then I thoroughly recommend Ancestors: A Humankind Odyssey. Open world survival isn't usually for me, and this is a case of Ancestors. Pathologic 2 is odd. It's also a horror RPG set in a plagued community. You know how I am with horror, not a fan to say the least. Unlike last month's horror game, I was able to play for the full 30 minutes required to gather footage. It's certainly eerie, with dark foggy streets and a camera that sits just a little bit too close to its subjects. I walked through abstract environments, spoke to the mysterious locals, and saw some bird-like figures standing in the distance. I was then asked to fetch some water. I found a barrel, which allowed me to drink some water for myself, but asked for me to find a bottle. I searched every cupboard for bottles, and although I found some spooky masked figures, I couldn't find a bottle. My time gathering footage was finished, and I didn't want to play any longer. Pathologic 2 made me uneasy without making me scream, so if you're looking for something a little unsettling and have a better knack for finding bottles in games than I do, then take a look at Pathologic 2. In my opinion, being able to play 30 minutes of a horror game is a feat in its own right, for good or for bad. Warhammer Chaosbane is an ARPG set in the Warhammer universe. Honestly, I'm not sure what more I can say. I'm unaware of the Warhammer lore and the mythos, so as a newcomer, this just felt like a pretty standard fantasy hack and slash RPG. With its collectible loot, mana-based magic systems, and standard fantasy classes, if you've played an ARPG before, you've most likely played Warhammer Chaosbane. There's nothing inherently bad about Warhammer Chaosbane, all of its systems work well, and visually the landscapes look good, but neither is there anything revolutionary for the genre. Still, if you're looking for a standard ARPG to spend some time with, or are particularly fond of Warhammer, then Chaosbane should provide some fun for you. It's not one for me, unfortunately. The second simulator this month is Total Tank Simulator. Let me say that first things first, this was a pleasant surprise. I wasn't sure what to expect going in. What I was greeted by was a thoroughly entertaining game, which reminded me of a more advanced, totally accurate battle simulator. I played some of the first missions from the UK campaign. With multiple campaigns in different countries, there seems to be a lot of content here. In a wartime period, you'll be placing down different costing units with a set budget to destroy the enemy. If this sounds complicated or confusing, then don't worry, as the game features a down-to-basics UI and a low-poly, non-intimidating art style. I started by viewing my battles from above, before moving closer in. In fact, I zoomed so close into the sprawling battle that I was following a unit and stumbled across a first-person mode. Playing as one of my units in first person was great fun. Moving left to right, watching my fellow allies advance towards the front line was enabled by pressing the left control button. In fact, Total Tank Simulator doesn't just provide a fun casual grand tactics, but also a low-poly first-person shooter that wasn't half bad. As with most games that feature hundreds of units at once, you'll need a decent CPU, and a tolerance for either a low frame rate or low graphic preset. If you're a fan of casual grand unit strategy games, or games set in wartime, then take a look at Total Tank Simulator. I think you'll be surprised. Song of Horror Complete Edition is a third-person narrative-heavy horror. You play as Daniel, a journalist with an incredibly strong English accent. I've recently been playing Detroit Become Human, and Song of Horror uses the same camera system, constantly moving when a new area is reached. This third-person perspective does lose some of the immersion, but in its tight, diorama-like areas, a claustrophobic quality is evoked for good or for worse. A mysterious music box plays a spooky tune, and it's up to me to discover it. Without spoiling too much of the early game, Daniel became unplayable, and so a new character needed to find this music box again. You'll know how I am with horror, but I played 20 minutes, which is more than I can say about other games. Its third-personness helped make me a little less scared, but from what I played so far, it seems pretty spooky, if a little cliché in the horror genre. I quit the game as soon as the bad guy came into force, thanks to a rattle by a doorway. I'd gathered enough footage, and hey, I needed to have unshaking fingers to type this review up, right? Critically, Song of Horror fares extremely well. I didn't take any enjoyment from this game, but that's the case of most games in the horror genre, so take my words with a grain of salt. Not Tonight is a post-Brexit management game. You'll be playing as a bouncer, working to reclaim your rights to live and work in a no-deal UK. So far, my job has been deciding whether customers can enter a pub by checking their ID for expirations or underage entry. At first, I thought this one could become monotonous or boring, but with some good music, lovely pixel art and well-written topical dialogue, it's kept my interest thus far. As I played more of the game, I discovered bribery, upgrades and promotions, so I think there'll be some varieties to the basic formula over the roughly 10 hours beat time. Not Tonight does require a surprisingly high amount of focus. It's not a passive game by any means, as I was constantly scouring ID cards, checking expiration dates and ages. As the gameplay begins in 2018, it did take me a while to accustom to the fact that 18-year-olds are born in 2000 and not 2002, but with a little reminder at the top of the screen, this helped massively. I've recently been playing Ubisoft's Watch Dogs Legion, and I've noticed multiple parallels between both games. Both games feature a dystopian graffiti-ridden landscape, both games feature a policing force known as Albion, and both games feature a political story, though Not Tonight has felt much more bold in tackling themes such as prejudice and deportation. It's interesting to see such a topical game in this month's choice, and it's certainly a bold move from Humble. If you like to play a game inspired by current affairs, then take a look at Not Tonight. Up next is Vampire the Masquerade, Shadows of New York, an expansion to the first visual novel, but with its own narrative. I reviewed Code Trace of New York in September, and commented on its great art and excellent writing. Well, with this second game, the writing is better and the art remains superb. Look, I'm still not into the whole dark vampire tone, but I enjoyed seeing the crossovers with the modern day New York. I played as a journalist struggling to find a permanent career in the field, who was fired thanks to her involvement in bringing, or at least trying to bring, a big mysterious scandal to light. Fired from work, I boarded the subway, got taken by a mysterious individual, didn't want to shoot them, so they shot me, and I died. The credits then rolled, and that was the end of my time with the game. Despite the great writing and art, the mood and overall vampiric, is that a word? Theme isn't for me, but if a visual novel blending modern day New York and vampires sounds intriguing, regardless on whether you played the previous game, then do take a look at Shadows of New York. Tales of the Neon Sea is a 2D pixel art adventure. Waking up chased by a shadowy figure, I search the sewers for new mechanical body parts in order to return home. The game features an art style that reminded me of Darkside Detective, and it simply looks fantastic, with detailed backdrops and a minimalistic character style that I enjoy. The prologue's overall mood reminded me a lot of Mo Astray. In the prologue, I even got to play as a cat, so that's definitely a good start to a game. When there's dialogue, the game uses a 2D hand-drawn style to showcase a character, which works surprisingly well with the pixel graphics behind. When there is dialogue, the game does a weird 2-second fade to switch between the playable mode, detecting input and a cutscene. It's only a small issue, but in a game that features so much dialogue, it did detract from my experience ever so slightly. The story so far seems like a good cyberpunk narrative. You play as a disgruntled detective with a suitable cyberpunk name, Rex. With a beaked figure haunting Rex in the prologue, I assume this will serve as the antagonist in Tales of the Neon Sea. In addition to the story, the game seems to be littered with puzzles. You'll either love or hate this. As for me, I've enjoyed the puzzles so far. They're pretty standard, with one such puzzle requiring me to connect the pipes to let electricity through. I'm intrigued by Tales of the Neon Sea. I'd never heard of this before the bundle, and it appears to be a hidden gem, so I'm looking forward to playing more. Minoria is a dark action Metroidvania. In the midst of a magical war, you must defeat the evil minions and bring purity to the world. Its Steam page says it's a spiritual sequel to the Momodora series, but I'd never played or even heard of this series before, so take this review as a newcomer's perspective. I'm surprised to say that I love this game. Travelling between rooms, the standard Metroidvania fare. Kill enemies, get a key, use that key to get to the next room, find a boss in that room, then repeat. You get the idea. The game stands apart thanks to its gorgeous cel-shaded sombre art style with cramped halls and rooms. There's also a lovely score made up of strings which is wholly mysterious. The game also offers a real challenge. It's far from impossible, but you will need to pay attention when dodging and attacking. A quick tip: to get the most damage, press the attack button as much as you can in between enemy attacks, and you'll stay alive for much longer. The art style helps with the fluidity of the combat, and instances are used to help with healing, attack boosts or extra projectiles. There's also a good level of save points where dying means some progress is lost, but not so much as to warrant a rage quit. This game surprised me massively, and its fluid combat and wonderful art means there really is magic in Minoria. Deleveled is an interesting little platformer. You'll have concurrent controls of two cubes that sit symmetrically opposed. Essentially, you'll be falling from heights and jumping off each other's momentum. There's no jump button and it's difficult to put into words. Luckily this is a video review and not a written one. The music is a bit repetitive, but there were a few moments, even in the first tenth of the game, where I had to sit back for a moment and wonder how I reached the end. Look, I'll D-level with you, this won't be on anyone's Game of the Year lists, but it doesn't need to be. If you're looking for a visually basic but mechanically unique platformer, then spend some time with Deleveled. The last game this month is The Ambassador Fractured Timelines. It's a fantasy twin-stick shooter with a time-freezing mechanic. Honestly, with just 16 reviews on Steam, I was hesitant. In actual fact, this is a pretty good game. Although its fantasy story has felt pretty safe within the genre, its gameplay has been fun. You've most likely played a game like this before, so I won't go into much detail, but essentially you have enemies who are vulnerable and invincible at varying times, and a twin-stick projectile spear or sword to attack these enemies. Then there's also a mana-based weapon and a time freeze mechanic, which freezes crumbling bridges or temporarily stops enemy attacks. This also serves as a Breath of the Wild stasis-like function, being able to break rocks, revealing health, increasing food. Like many games this month, it beat my expectations, and at an approximate runtime of 2 hours based on Steam reviews, playing Fractured Timelines wouldn't be a bad game to spend an evening with. So let's sum up my overall thoughts on this month's offering. It's a good choice overall. There were no games this month that I hated or felt lazily developed. There are also plenty of surprises. I admittedly went into Minoria, Total Tank Simulator and PC Building Simulator with reservations, but they went above and beyond my expectations. It's nice to see the humble original do something new, and there's good variety in this month's offering, with horrors, platformers, simulators and more. With classic and premium subs getting all 12 games, again there's no choices to be made. When I first saw this month's lineup, I was worried that I wouldn't return to any of these games post-review, but this certainly isn't the case. I'll definitely return to Minoria, and that's a real surprise. And that's how I felt about this month's humble choice. With these humble reviews, I usually play the games for around half an hour each, share my thoughts and then upload the video to YouTube. If you'd like to hear my long-term thoughts on 2020's humble choice lineup, then I have 2 episodes of a podcast special I recorded with Austin from BombChew, linked in the description. We look over the games that we return to and our thoughts on Humble Surface overall and what might change in the future. Thanks for watching.